Most movies want to be timeless. They want to be The Godfather. They want to be Casablanca. They want to be Shrek. They want to sit on the shelf like fine wine, waiting for every new generation to discover them and go, yep, this still holds up. Scary Movie had different plans. It didn't want to be wine. It wanted to be like a firework. It wanted to be funny right now, before the joke expired. Released on July 7th, 2000, Scary Movie did something ridiculous, but kinda brilliant. It turned Ghostface into a punchline. It turned a beer commercial into a major set piece, and it turned the entire late 90s teen horror boom into one giant middle finger shaped balloon animal. And for a brief moment, it was everywhere. But here's the weird thing. The more time passes, the less Scary Movie feels like a normal comedy, and the more it feels like an archaeological dig. When you watch it today, you're not just watching the jokes. You are watching pop culture of the year 2000. You're watching dead catchphrases, forgotten celebrity personas, MTV era horniness, parody of movies that were still fresh, and references that already started to rot by the time this thing hit DVD. And that leads to the real question. Did Scary Movie age badly? Or did it age exactly the way it was designed to? Because maybe Scary Movie was never built to last. Maybe it was built to explode. To understand why Scary Movie feels so crusty today, we have to talk about how comedies age. Some comedies are built on permanent human things, like insecurity, embarrassment, fear, relationships, awkwardness. That horrible feeling of being trapped in a situation you can't escape. This is why something like Groundhog Day and The Big Lebowski can still work. You do not need to live in 1993 to understand a guy who feels stuck in the same day forever, and you don't need exact cultural context to understand a guy who just wants his rug back. But Scary Movie runs on a much more unstable fuel source: recognition. A lot of laughs in this movie are not really, this is a clever joke. They're more, oh my god, they're doing Scream, they're doing the Blair Witch Project, The Matrix. And that kind of comedy can be incredibly powerful, but it has a catch. It only fully works if the audience already has the reference loaded into their brain. Scary Movie doesn't explain the culture to you, it assumes you just came from it. And that is why some younger viewers are probably going to run into a wall. Because if you're Gen Z or younger, Scary Movie is not just an old comedy. It's a comedy built out of references to things you weren't there for. You probably recognize Ghostface. You probably know The Matrix. You might have watched The Blair Witch Project. But the actual texture of the movie, the commercials, the celebrity jokes, it's not your nostalgia. That is someone else's internet before the internet. So when an older viewer watches Scary Movie, they're not just watching the movie, they're remembering the whole ecosystem. But when a younger viewer watches it, the movie has to survive on the jokes alone. And that is a much harder test. Because once the references stop feeling current, the movie has to answer the most brutal question a parody can face. Is this funny if I don't know what it's making fun of? For Scary Movie, the answer is kinda complicated. Sometimes yes, a lot of the physical comedy can still work, and Faris still works, and the speed of the movie still works. But a lot of the movie does not ask you to understand the joke. It asks you to remember the world that made the joke possible. Basically, Scary Movie assumes you are soaking in the pop culture of the moment, or when Scary Movie, in this case the original, came out. If you want to understand the entire movie in one scene, all you have to do is look at the Whassup scene. Because today, the scene is kind of insane. A younger viewer is watching this scene and is thinking, why is this happening? What is going on? Because today, the Whassup scene feels like a dead meme wearing human skin. But in 2000, this was not a dead meme. This was the meme. Whassup was one of those catchphrases that escaped advertising and infected real life. People said it at school. People said it at work. They said it on television. And that is what Scary Movie is actually making fun of. It's not parodying Budweiser. It's parodying the way the catchphrase can take over everyday life. And that's why this scene becomes fascinating. Because the joke did not die because it failed. The joke died because it captured a moment too specifically. Once the moment passed, the joke turned into a fossil. And that's what this whole movie is. It's a comedy trapped in amber. Now, real quick, if you miss this era of pop culture as much as I do, please take a second to hit that subscribe button.
Get in, loser, we're going shopping.
We're gonna be going back and experiencing the 2000s pop culture that the millennials lived through, and maybe some of you Gen Z may have missed. And I'd love to have you along for the ride. This brings us to the most important comparison, Scream. Because Scream is also full of references. It's also meta. It's obsessed with horror rules, genre commentary, and characters who know too much about movies. But Scream survived. Actually, it did more than just survive. It became one of those horror movies that keeps finding new audiences. So why does Scream still feel like a movie, while Scary Movie often feels like a time capsule? Underneath all the meta commentary, Scream still works as a real movie. It has suspense. It has a killer opening, if you know what I mean. It has a girl you care about, a real sense of danger. Even if you don't understand the horror movie references, you can still follow the story. You can still wonder who's the killer. You can feel the tension. The references make Scream smarter, but they're not the only thing keeping it alive. Scary Movie does not have that luxury. It's a kind of parasite movie, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it almost biologically. It needs a host. It needs Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Blair Witch Project. The host is the entire pop culture bloodstream of 1999 and 2000. When the host is alive, Scary Movie feels alive. But when the host gets old, the parody starts to fossilize. Because you can't understand the subversion if you don't remember the version. Without Scream being fresh, Cindy Campbell is not a sharp parody of Sidney Prescott. She's just a very strange woman in a very stupid movie. And here is where the real argument clicks. Scary Movie is remembered as a horror parody, and technically, yes, that's what it is. But spiritually, Scary Movie really isn't about horror, it's about the year 2000. Look at the tone of this movie. Everything is loud, horny, mean, stupid on purpose. This is the era of American Pie, MTV, Jackass, shock comedy, gross out humor, teen movies that look like they were edited by someone who drank 3 cans of Surge. The goal wasn't excellence. The goal was impact. Then there's the casting. And this is one of the biggest reasons the movie feels so locked to its moment. I call it the celebrity vacuum. In a timeless movie, you usually cast an actor because they disappear into the character. In Scary Movie, they casted people because they bring a whole lot of cultural baggage into the room. Take Carmen Electra. She's not just playing Drew Decker. She's not playing Drew Barrymore. She's walking into the movie as Carmen Electra. That matters. The audience in 2000 are not just seeing a character. They're seeing a very specific kind of Y2K celebrity. Her presence is already part of the joke before the joke even starts. But then you have Anna Faris. And Anna Faris is the secret weapon of the entire movie. Because while everyone else is exploding into slapstick, screaming sex jokes and random pop culture references, she plays Cindy Campbell with this weird sincerity. She is ridiculous, obviously, but she's not winking at the camera every second. She gives the movie just enough emotional shape to keep it from becoming pure noise. This is why Cindy works. Not because she's deep, but because Anna Faris gives the audience something to hold on to while everything else is really on fire. She is the anchor in a movie that is actively trying to sink itself. Now, I don't want this to turn into one of those videos where we just point at an old comedy and go, wow, this is dated. Because that's boring, and honestly, it's not fair to Scary Movie. Yes, parts of it aged badly. Some jokes are painfully dated. But the movie still has something a lot of modern comedies are missing. Momentum. This movie moves. It does not sit around waiting for you to admire the writing. It does not protect its dignity. It doesn't care if you find a joke distasteful. It does not care if a gag is stupid. It just keeps throwing things at you. And there's a real craft in that. Being this dumb takes confidence, and bad dumb comedies feel accidental. Scary Movie feels weaponized. It knows exactly what kind of stupid it wants to be. And when the Wayans brothers are on their game, The physical comedy still works. There's actual comedic timing under the rubble. The references, they're a bit aged, but the rhythm survived. But that brings us to the rewatch problem. A normal comedy asks one question: is this still funny? Scary Movie asks a harder question: do you know why this is funny? And for younger viewers, the question gets even harsher, because they're not asking, do I know why this is funny? They're asking, was this ever funny? And that's a totally different viewing experience. If you grew up around this stuff, you can mentally fill in the gaps. But if you did not grow up with that, Scary Movie can feel like walking into a conversation halfway through and everyone is already laughing. You can understand why something is supposed to be funny, but it doesn't always feel like it clicks. And that might be the best proof of the movie's expiration date. Not that younger viewers can't enjoy it, they can, but they're watching it through glass. The original audience was inside the joke. Everyone else is visiting the exhibit. That is a completely different experience. Because when a joke is built on character, it can survive without context. But when a joke is built on recognition, the reference is part of the punchline. Forget the reference, and half the joke disappears. So, did Scary Movie age badly? I think it depends. But I also think it's the least interesting way to talk about it. Because for older viewers, this movie is nostalgia. For younger viewers, it's kind of, like I said earlier, archaeology. And somehow, both reactions prove the same point. Scary Movie was never trying to float above the culture. It was trying to crash directly into it. It was disposable, loud, crude, hyper-specific. This is why younger audiences might not get half the references. And that's also why the movie matters. Because timeless movies tell us what lasts. Dated movies tell us what it feels like to be alive at a specific moment. Scary Movie is not timeless, but it might be one of the purest time capsules of the year 2000 ever made. It did not survive the culture, it was the culture. And maybe, for a movie like this, that is the greatest legacy of all.